my God. I've never seen such a stern look of focus. This is his strong matchup, and he's really exploiting Protoss' weakness in the mid game.
Yeah, and again, I mean, if you're just tuning in, these players have practiced together a lot, especially the teams in Korea. It's not like the international teams sometimes where they're spread out, there's different time zones. They wake up, they play each other, and then they go to bed and they repeat. So they have so many games against each other that I think that, you know, if you're a different player, going up against the double gas with those two probes in there can kind of confuse you a little bit. You're like, oh my God, is this a DT rush? I'm making proxy Stargate. Where's all this gas going?
Yeah.
But I think really the only misread he had was when he built the Ghost Academy.
Yeah.
But Ghost Academies aren't that expensive. You can get them relatively early, and it's not going to completely throw him off. Now, if he had 4 Ghosts, then all of a sudden, that is a big investment.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now stepping into Game 2 of this best of 5 between 2 top Terran players. The man up 1-0, who has not had a big win in a long time. Can he do it today? If you'd like him to win, give a cheer for Startail Bomber!
And down in the bottom left game, currently down 0-1, but having an extremely close series there with that 2-base timing. If you love Protoss or Squirtle, give a cheer for Startail Squirtle!
You know, it's so amazing if you look at Squirtle's accomplishments to see that really the last big tournaments that Squirtle were at internationally were IPL very recently, and then before that, hasn't really shown up since IEM World Championships in 2011, almost a year and a half ago. So there was this huge gap where Squirtle just quietly went back to Korea, got himself up in tip-top form, and now has a huge amount of fans here today.
And yeah, you know, Squirtle is a name that I would expect to see at more and more tournaments, you know, outside of Korea, just because it's not all about how good you are at StarCraft. It's also how well can you respond to being in a completely different environment,
Yes.
as well as having lots of jet lag. You know, being in a location where you don't really know anyone, you maybe have 1 or 2 teammates with you, it can be very stressful. And so far, Squirtle has shown, you know, when he travels around, he can perform very well. And so, you know, on Startail's end, they're like, hey, this guy's pretty good. He's winning a lot. People seem to like him. Let's keep sending him.
And I really hope we get to see him match up more and more against these foreign players. Just seeing his flexible style is really impressive, and given the fact that the map choice is Cloud Kingdom, would not be surprised to see him go well into the late game. And there we do see, yet again, Cybernetics core going down. Probe did get delayed slightly, but the 2 in gas finishing up. And you will see this Zealot again get built, go to about halfway, and then when he sees the expand, he whips right back around and cancels this one Zealot.
Yep, there's a Zealot, just as you said, Sean, beginning to build up right now. The scouting probe, he did scout the 3rd base first, and he's not going to be able to, well, he might not be able to make it past this Marine. He is going to go for it, though. He needs to spot if there is a command center there. Spots it and saves the probe there.
Wow.
Unfortunately, Sean, Marines slower than probes, so we're not going to have an exciting probe chase here again.
There's the Zealot cancel, stepping forward. If he goes in there and sees no command center, then he just goes, oh, let the Zealot finish. Sure, the Terran player could be early expanding in the main base and then lift and move it down, but you're going to lose way more than 100 minerals when you do that move. So the loss of 100 minerals in the Zealot ends up not being a big deal then.
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially if they aren't doing that and they decide to attack you with a lot of early units. Having that first Zealot can be crucial, even if they're rushing towards getting the Marauder slow right away for some sort of, you know, really early, maybe like 2 racks pressure, then having that Zealot does help deal with that relatively easily. We do have Squirtle going to be throwing down an expansion here as well. And Sean, on paper, it looks like this expansion is way later than Bombers, but does it really play out like that?
Honestly, it's a much earlier expansion than the average Protoss tends to get, so it's quite an excellent timing out of Squirtle, and I would actually generally say that that is the ideal timing that you want to get. You know, we've been talking a lot about Squirtle in this game. I want to come back to Bomber's very clever 1 refinery opening. Almost always we see the 2 refineries go down as the Terran just starts to slam out everything, but just by leaving this geyser open, he's gaining about 120 minerals a minute by not having these extra SCVs in there. This gives him just enough money to add on those slightly earlier 4th and 5th barracks, which were so key in helping him stay alive in Game 1.
Well, and especially, I mean, it shows that the timing of these builds is so it's down to the second, where you mentioned, getting a barracks a couple of seconds earlier. That's actually what ended up saving him in that game. And it also gave him a little extra resources to spend on the Ghost Academy, which, made him not be really far behind for that misread. We do still see, kind of the similar style to what we saw before. I mean, if we take a look at the units tab, we have a Stalker, 3 Sentries, and a Zealot. That's not really a lot of units here to hold off if there was some sort of timing. But Squirtle, with good scouting, is able to see exactly what's going on. And we do see a Warpin up here at the north. Sean, is he looking to be aggressive off this 3-gate?
Ooh, I'm liking this. I mean, there's so many variants that you can perform off this build. It looks like what we're going to see out of Squirtle is that he's going to start morphing in a lot of units. And then right around now, 7 minutes, he's going to go for a small push. But Bomber, wow, is Bomber prepared. Has a complete excellent read. Gets the second bunker up with plenty of time to spare. And Squirtle's so pissed he's going to blow up the rocks. No, he's actually going to go for it. Yeah, trying to pick off a couple of units at the front is what he's going for.
Yeah, he realizes, hey, man, there's 2 bunkers there. I can't destroy that with the units I have. There's just not that much DPS in this army. I mean, with 2 Zealots and just a handful of Stalkers, the SCVs can easily deal with that. But we do have the SCV also scouting in the main base, as he was able to see, I believe, almost everything that was going on there, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, he saw all the gateways. He knows that there's no tech. He knows that there's no nothing, Mike. And now we see those 2 sentries popping out, and Squirtle might go for an expand followed by a bunch of gateways. Yep, there's the expand going down right now. He's going to have to throw down a lot of gateways very soon, though, if he wants to be able to hold this off. We see Bomber now getting the +1, the factory finishing up, still making almost all Marines. Not actually a single Marauder out yet. That's how he conserved that little bit of gas to get away with not building this refinery.
Yeah, and I remember when StarCraft 2 first came out, and especially when they changed around the Marauder a little bit, everyone was like, oh my god, I have to get Marauder upgrades right away. It's only 50 minerals, 50 gas. I remember all the posts are like, well, why would you never get it? Well, guess what? This is StarCraft 2. Every mineral and every piece of gas does absolutely count. That's why he's going to be skipping that here for a little bit, although Squirtle has to be so careful here. He does have a lot of sentries, but Sean, if he tries to retreat and these sentries get out of position, that is so much gas wasted.
Yeah, Squirtle's playing a little bit with fire right here, but this is one way to make sure that he knows exactly where the Terran force is. Terran actually has to keep all his units here, because if some of them lift up in medevacs and go elsewhere, Squirtle can go for a big kill. So this means that Squirtle will have a lot more room to plant force fields and get this fourth defended. He just now is getting these 4 gateways. Still going to be a little while before he can even afford to get the Twilight Council up.
Yeah, and I just want to say this is a great read here by Squirtle. I mean, he has no detection to speak of. He's continuing to add on gateways here, so he knows that his opponent's not going to be going for Cloaked Banshees, anything like that. He's also confident that his opponent's not going to be going for any sort of drop play. So the fact that he has that good of a read, he can sit out here at the front of the base, and it does look like this is going to be spotted by the fact he decides to go for it. It does look like Guardian Shield going to be used here. Where are the force fields at? Here we go!
Squirtle's going to get eaten alive in this push. Goes absolutely abysmally. A nice follow-up swing on the force fields allows him to nab a couple of units at the front. But now that the medevacs and stem arrived, +1 is done. Squirtle literally hit it at the exact mistiming. Double Forge, Twilight Council, the only correct follow-up he can do at this point. But he's going to need a force field, go home very soon, or else he's going to run the risk of losing his whole army to a missed stem.
Yeah, and Sean, we do have that Double Forge on the way. And do you like this, sticking on pure gateway units when you're trying to break a turtling Terran here?
This is just a defensive play by Squirtle. He doesn't want to pull all the way back and run the risk of having to put some Stalkers in his main to defend against drops and leave some units at the front. He can easily get picked off and isolated. This forces the entire Terran army to be in one spot. And desperately, we will see the Protoss player trying to get these upgrades finished as fast as possible. He needs both 1-1 and the charge to be able to withstand this in a direct assault.
Now, I am noticing that Squirtle is retreating as soon as his third base is scouted here. Is this because it's going to be telling the Terran player that, here's a big attack there. It does look like a couple units will go down. Need to be careful with the medevac. Will save those units. And that's something that we've seen Bomber do throughout this tournament, is load those units even though they're on the wrong side of the force fields, even though there's a risk of losing the medevac, able to save those quite heavily. We don't see the additional gas at this third base here, but we do have 1-1 plus Zealot legs on the way.
Holy crap, Squirtle is playing so brilliantly. The huge issue that you always deal with is having these multi-pronged attacks, these multi-pronged drops, and Squirtle responds by leaving his whole army at the front for as long as possible, but he still needs another 20 seconds to get that upgrade up. He's trying to chrono boost. He's getting up to 12 gateways. He's going to be trying to do a mass zealot push there. The defensive force field, the only play that he can make to help buy him that extra critical period of time, and it looks like he will barely get that out in time.
Also, Sean, very importantly, the expansion, the third base was heavily delayed by a couple of zealots, killing off that SCV multiple times and denying that. You can see the command center is very low on HP as well, but that's going to help him out a lot here because he's had his third base up and running, and he wants to buy more time. He wants Bomber to be focusing on a different expansion right now. It does look, here he goes. He got Stim. He's going to run up here. Squirrel's completely out of position. Where are his units at? He did send them, unfortunately, the incorrect way, but can he trap these units? You got to remember, he has no blink.
His main base is so vulnerable, and he is supply blocked. We might very well see Squirtle just dart right up into the main base. There now are the huge force field walls going down. The Zealots have to reinforce from the wrong direction, and Bomber demolishes Squirtle with ease. I mean, Squirtle was making some absolutely brilliant decisions that game, but I mean, Bomber is doing the simple but perhaps most effective technique, just making his economy manage properly to get those buildings out so fast.
Yeah, and really, I mean, he seemed to be in an okay spot there. He was defensively force-fielding the ramp. He was buying the time to get the 1-1 as well as the legs. He did buy the time, and then right when he got those, he's like, all right, I'm going to move out and make something happen here. Unfortunately, he swung around the incorrect way. He had no good angle to attack. Then the units are on the high ground. The medevacs, even if he was losing that battle, could have loaded them up and dropped that entire army inside the main base because he had no blink. And the Zealots, even with Zealot legs, yes, they move quickly, but he was at the third. It's going to take him an extremely long time to get inside the base, which just shows you the importance of unit positioning, especially as Protoss in those mid-game engagements versus Terran. And also, I mean, he did go for the double forge, but he still, during that engagement, did not have ridiculous 2-2 or 3-3, which means it was still a fairly equal battle.
And, you know, I think it's interesting to reflect on the sort of history of Terran play and what makes Bombers play quite interesting. Generally, Terran players have been going some kind of 3 barracks mixture to fast medevacs and then expanding. In other words, they stay on the 3 barracks for a pretty long time in favor of getting up the extra base. Or maybe they'll make a whole bunch of barracks at the start and have very late medevacs.
All right, if you're, well.
What we're seeing Bomber do in these games is that he's just delaying the third. He's getting the 3 barracks, the fast medevacs, and then getting the extra 2 barracks afterwards. So generally where you would see 2 medevac drops or maybe 10 units at the front, he's doing 4 medevac drops and 20 units at the front. And it's just too much for Squirtle to deal with.
Yeah, and you do mention delaying the third. That's exactly, I mean, we saw it even delayed more in this game, but the fact that his expansion got delayed, he didn't even care because his build was mostly relying on doing a strong mid-game attack. And yeah, it got delayed, which of course you don't want, but that was kind of the least of his problems there because he didn't have SCVs over there. He wasn't exactly planning to mine there. It was just kind of his backup plan. And so all of a sudden, you know, he's at the front door, so many units, but the countdown has begun. And man, Squirtle is up against the ropes, but he has come back from these 0-2 deficits in the past. So he's just got to focus here and make sure his positioning is absolutely perfect.
And it looks like game number 3 has begun. It is match point. Bomber up 2-0. Could be.